Moving on to Gratias Ardumus, the chorus, which is number 7 in most people's copies. This we've already discussed in choir rehearsals that this is obviously the same music that concludes the whole piece, De Nobis Pacem. Bear in mind, of course, that that this part of the work, the Kyrie and Gloria, was written first. So what Bach is in fact doing is choosing to repeat what he'd written first at the end as a kind of concluding piece of music. What is interesting to me is there's a very fundamental building block. We've talked about the scale of the fourth, and that's something which we're going to see more and more of, especially this week actually. The first interval of the solo movement we just looked at was a rising fourth there. And in the same way, the Gratias has this scale going up a fourth, this time including the step. Which all of the parts have in front of them and take over relatively quickly. We've seen often some of the movements which are fugues. You have the sort of fugue idea is presented in its entirety, a few bars before the next part comes in. This is not like that. This is more harmonic straight away. So you get the voices coming in after just 2 notes. And then again, the voices working slightly in pairs. Basses and tenors are duplicated by the altos and sopranos. And this continues with this idea just for a short time before it moves into a more agitated, more active. This figure which the basses introduce near the beginning, which is immediately again taken up by the tenors and the voices working in pairs. This movement is doubled throughout by instruments. The orchestration is relatively straightforward. The strings double the voices at the beginning. But what Bach does is again, he's using height. 2 things he's using. He's using the tessitura and using how high the music is, literally, in terms of whether you're singing high or low. So that the first, if you look at the soprano part, for example, the first 2 entries at this pitch. So that happens in bar 3 and at the same pitch in bar 10. The same idea, Gratias, happens there again. Now, what happens at bar 15 is that we get a longer first note, but otherwise the same idea. And that feels like a complete idea because it starts with a rising fourth and ends it by also falling down the fourth again on the Ardumus tibi. And at that point in bar 15, the trumpets come in, just the first trumpet this time. So listen out for that when you hear it in a second. So once again, it instead of the basses starting off this propter maniam, this time he does it upside down. That's very common with Bach. Always taking an idea, turning it upside down, inverting it is the sort of posh way. We've got this propter maniam, this time in the key of E minor at the end of bar 19. And the voices come in the opposite way. The first time they went from the basses going up, this time it's sopranos coming down. Of course, this movement is just mostly in 4 parts. So it's a more simple it's amazing how much more complicated it is having 5 parts. If you've ever tried writing any music, you'll realise that that's the case. It's quite easy to write 2 parts that fit together when you're talking about melodies that fit together. It's much harder writing 3, harder again writing 4, really hard writing 5. So again, we have these ideas. It's building up gradually, building up higher. What is particularly exciting is that Bach introduces, after the sopranos have had it in bar 30, at the end of bar 30, that's also doubled by the flutes and oboes a little bit. Then we have this very, very high trumpet part, which comes in an octave higher than that at bar 32. At that time, there's 2 trumpet parts come in. And what he does is he saves the full trumpet texture for the very end, when we have the last time the trumpets have this very high lead is at bar 42. And this time we've also got all 3 trumpets playing very high, going up to top A's, A's for them, and because they're transposing instruments. Then it ends with this wonderful conclusion, and we get this kind of typical timpani rhythm to finish this movement in emphatic style.